My name is Dick Catri, and I've had a wonderful time with the sport of surfing. And just to give you just a little bit of history about me, I was born in New Jersey, a town called Carteret. My parents moved to Florida when I was 7 years old. And I had the opportunity to live in what is now the center of activity in South Beach. Lived in one of the hotels right there on Collins Avenue, and was introduced to the Atlantic Ocean. And I went to work on Miami Beach. I taught swimming and diving and ran swimming pool concessions and just had a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time to work on Miami Beach. Money was good and it wasn't real hard work. Well, right there is where I ran into a gentleman named Jack Roland Murphy. Most people know him as Murph The Surf. I was a springboard diver. The first job I had on the beach, I worked for a fellow named Bert Williams, who was a protege of Sammy Lee, and he taught me how to springboard dive. And I became a professional springboard diver and ran into Murphy, who was a professional comedian. And as an activity, when I worked on the beach, I used to do a lot of spearfishing. And when I ran into Murphy, he had the perfect situation. When the ocean was too rough to spearfish, I could go surfing. He had a Jacobs balsa board that he had gotten from California. He, of course, was from California and surfed with L.J. Richards and Phil Edwards and all the rest of those guys. And I learned how to stand up on his balsa board. So about that time, Murphy said, let's go to California. We can get some new boards. So we jumped in my '55 Chevrolet and drove out to California. We managed to get together with Phil Edwards, and he had a board in his shop that did not have an owner and wanted to sell it. So we went down to the Oceanside Pier, and I tried to ride the board, but keep in mind I was a real novice at the time, and I didn't feel like the board floated me. Well, Phil went out on it and just ripped. Unbeknownst to me, I got so deeply involved in the sport of surfing that I said, if you're going to do this, you really ought to be in Hawaii. I had experienced California already, and it was too cold. The water was cold. It was cold on the beach. Being from Florida, I didn't like that at all. So I had a sister whose husband was the provost marshal at Pearl Harbor. And my mom wanted to go to Hawaii, so I said, well, I'll go with you, Mom, and I'd like to stay. So I got to Hawaii, went out and got a job in a cabinet shop in the middle of a junkyard, and bought a car and started traveling around between Waikiki and the North Shore. Well, this begins my surfing career. I ran into a guy named Buzzy Trent at the Waikiki Center, met George Downing, who is still my hero, my idol, but made a deal with Buzzy Trent, who had just bought a truck, and he wanted to make his truck a mobile home for him and his wife to live in. So I said to Buzzy, you show me the lineups on the North Shore, and I'll build bed, cabinets, and everything else in your truck for you, which I had access to at the cabinet shop that I worked at. The deal was made. The only problem with it was, by then I had got my 9.6 Yater hot dog board, and Buzzy was riding a 12-foot Brewer Buzzy Trent model gun. And what he called a lineup at these different places and what I was riding was two different things. I really didn't get into riding big waves the first year. I concentrated more in Waikiki. I lived on Polokalani Avenue, which is right down the street to Queens. And I tried to surf Queens just about every day that I could, whether it be in the morning before work or in the evening after work. Then I started going down to Ala Moana, and I met a lot of the really neat Hawaiian guys at Ala Moana. But I befriended two fellows that worked in the junkyard when I was putting my cars together. And they were Hawaiians. They took me to their homes, to luau's, to all kinds of really neat happenings, and they took me to Sand Island. Well, no Halleys were supposed to surf at Sand Island. But with the intro of these two kids, I was accepted. Between surfing there, surfing Garbage Hole, and surfing Ala Moana, I worked a really good relationship with Inter Island Surfboards and went in and bought one of their boards, which got me onto something that was more Hawaiian and less Californian. And then I started surfing the North Shore more often. I liked Haleiwa, and I liked Laniakea, and of course Chun's Reef and that whole area there. And I became really friendly with Butch Van Arsdalen. And the next year, I moved back to Florida. When I came back here to Florida and started organizing a surf team, I had that knowledge. These were things that the kids on the surf team had never even seen. And I was telling them how to do this and how to do that. Consequently, the Surfboards Hawaii team, between Gary Proper and his athletic ability to do all kinds of different moves, Bruce Velusi, who was a very good stylist, Mike Tabling and Fletcher Sharp, who were just outstanding nose riders, Mimi Monroe, who again was a great little girl surfer who was an outstanding nose rider. We pretty much, having the opportunity to surf on a year-round basis, we had 1 foot ahead of most of the other surf teams on the East Coast.